Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So thanks again for joining. Just an overview of the goals for this training today. I want to give you a basic understanding of why we're doing this research study with coral, an understanding of what the study design is that we've come up with over the last few months with America and Elvia, and then talk about or give you an understanding of the skills and tools you'll need to enroll students and parents into the study. So the agenda for today, we're going to talk about, why even engage in research. Then we'll go over the study design, and then we'll kind of get into the weeds with the recruitment and informed consent process, how to use the waitlist form, and how to manage the waitlist results. So if you haven't heard me talk before, I'm a project manager at the Lab for Economic Opportunities. We're a small research center out of the University of Notre Dame, and we partner with different service providers across the country to design impact evaluations to try and measure which anti-poverty programs are, producing results, and try to get the message out there about the best programs so that other people can take up those programs in their communities. And I work with David Phillips, who's not on this call today, but he is the principal investigator on this project.
So just to let the group know, he did visit Meadows a couple of weeks ago. Right? Yeah, so.
Yeah, and he couldn't join me today because he's got a 2-year-old and an infant at home, and I think it might be bedtime for him already. So I let him off the hook for this one. But so why are we, why does coral want to work with us? Why are we interested in evaluating coral? The first and foremost, we want to understand how coral is helping students and families. Does coral actually improve student achievement, and by how much? Does coral help students in other areas like school attendance, and do families benefit from having students participate in coral? We also want to build compelling evidence to help expand the program. If you guys can build this compelling evidence that coral really works, you can get more funding, open up more spots, expand to more schools, and maybe expand to other communities where students could benefit from this program. And lastly, we want to contribute to this general knowledge of what works. There's a well-documented achievement gap for students from minority backgrounds, students from English learner backgrounds, as well as students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And so we want to contribute to this general knowledge of what works in closing the achievement gap, so that we can get compelling evidence for policymakers and stakeholders in other communities so that they might bring coral-like programs to their communities. And this is just kind of an example of how research can help you broadcast the best kept secrets. We did an evaluation of a program in Chicago called the Homelessness Prevention Call Center, and we worked with All Chicago as well as Catholic Charities Chicago to see what the impact was when folks who called into this emergency assistance center looking for help on their rent. Sometimes they got funding because funding was available. Sometimes they didn't get funding because they just didn't have funding available. And we looked at the impact that had on shelter entry in Chicago and found that those who were able to get emergency rent assistance were much less likely to end up in shelters 3-6 months down the road, which makes a lot of sense, but no one had really proven that this very simple intervention of emergency financial assistance had such a big impact on homelessness prevention before. And so this got published in Science, and we were able to talk about it on radio shows in Chicago and really got to kind of get the news out there. And so that was a really great way to communicate how great this program is to other people. So overview of the study design that we've come up with. First, I just want to explain that this is an impact evaluation rather than just a program evaluation or a process evaluation. And there's 2 key things about impact evaluations. The first thing is we focus on final goals rather than inputs. So for instance, if you had a housing program, you might be able to say, we paid $20,000 in rent last year. And that's great, but that doesn't show how much you did to stabilize housing, which is your ultimate goal. So if you want to measure the impact of that program, you need to think of ways to measure that ultimate goal of stabilizing housing. And same for coral. You can say you served 1,000 students last year, but that doesn't show what sort of educational achievements were made. We want to focus on measuring those educational achievements. The other feature of an impact evaluation is this careful comparison to what would have happened in the absence of the program. That's really what impact is. It's that difference between what happened and what would have happened had the program not been introduced. And so sort of to illustrate this, say you have a program that's trying to address this rising rate of homelessness in your county, and this is the trend before the program. Then you introduce this new program, and wow, great. This looks like this program is kind of working, but the difference between this final gray arrow here and this final orange arrow, or this orange arrow here before the program starts, isn't really that big. But when you look at what the trend would have been without the program, you finally get to see the true impact of the program. You would have understated how effective this program was had you not known what the counterfactual was. Another example is, say you saw this result and you thought, wow, this program's really working, we should invest more. But turns out maybe something had happened in that county recently to get rid of homelessness altogether, and so you weren't really doing anything with this new program. And now you're in this situation where if you didn't know the counterfactual, you would have thought this program was really great and that you should be investing in it, when really this program wasn't doing anything at all. So that's why we want to make sure that we know what the counterfactual is. In Coral, how would students have done had they not had access to Coral? And that'll allow us to really measure what the impact of Coral is. So this is a study design we came up with. Say you have a classroom with 20 spots. Per usual, the principal will make the referrals that he wants to make. Say he has 15 kids that he wants to make sure are in the program, no problem, they get referred. So after that process is taken care of, you have 5 spots remaining, and we're going to open up the application process at that point for those 5 spots. Once you get all of your applications in, you'll send a list to Leo, and we will choose spots on a wait list by a random lottery. And then when you get back this list, you call the kids at the top of the wait list until your spots are full, and that top of the wait list who enrolled in Coral becomes our treatment group, and those who remain on the wait list because spots are full become our comparison group. And then at the end of the year, we'll be able to compare those who were interested in Coral, got in off of the wait list, to those who were interested in Coral and who didn't get in off the wait list, and see differences in their achievement at the end of the year. And the difference between those two groups at the end of the year is really because of the impact of Coral. Why are we doing this by lottery? Lottery is really the best way to get counterfactual, because it means the two groups on average are statistically identical at the beginning of the program. Otherwise, you can have these very confusing trends. So for instance, if you just picked a bunch of kids who were interested in Coral and compared them to a bunch of kids who weren't interested in Coral, these are not two groups that are going to be statistically the same at the beginning of the program, because these are at least on unobservable characteristics, because the kids who are interested in Coral, they might be more motivated to work on their grades. Maybe they were just ready to do that. They wanted to sign up for Coral. And so you would expect that group to do a little better than the group that wasn't interested in Coral or didn't have that chance to sign up and think about it at the time. You really want to get two groups who are equally interested in the program so that you can randomly select them and assume that on average, the two groups are going to be the same at the start. And so here's just another illustration of that. You want to identify a pool of eligible participants. If you select them by lottery, on average, these two groups are going to be exactly the same when they start out. And then at the end of the program or at the end of the intervention, any difference that emerges between these two groups who were exactly the same when you started out has to be due to the intervention. And so some questions that have come up as we've been talking about this Coral research design, why not compare referred students to other students at the same school? So why can't we include the referred students in the study? That's because most referred students they're the students that principals have chosen as the highest risk, highest need students. And so they're starting off a little differently than students in the, So they're starting off at a different level than the kids at the rest of the school because they're generally going to be higher risk or have lower grades. And so if you start out with these two groups that are not at all the same, you're not expecting their trends and educational outcomes to be the same. So you don't really know what the true differences between them at the end of the day. And then so another version of this question is, fine, let's select kids by lottery from a wait list, but how come the referred students aren't included in the treatment group when we make our comparison? And that's pretty much the same answer. If we added the referral children into the study and put them all in one group, they're going to make that one group look very different than the other group that was randomly selected. So again, you don't want to start off with one group that has higher risk kids with higher educational needs and compare them over time to a group that has children with slightly lesser needs or lesser educational delays or whatever that they're dealing with that didn't get the attention of the principal and the recommendation of the principal. So that's why we've settled on that research design. So now we're going to talk about the recruitment and informed consent process. So informed consent, it's not just a form, it's a process. And it's really about how we respect and involve participants in research as active participants along the way, and make sure that they know what they're getting into and that they understand what we're asking them to do. And the reason that we're so concerned about informed consent is because throughout history, there were all of these catalysts that cause us to really take a hard look at how we engage in research when humans are participants. I'm sure that you've heard of some of these particularly terrible studies. The Tuskegee experiment is probably one of the most infamous. This is where a bunch of lower income African-American men were enrolled into this study about syphilis. And not too long after the syphilis study was started, they found a cure for syphilis, but the researchers didn't tell them about it. And so for 40 years, they went untreated, and there was no good reason for that. And it was just terrible. So the tea room trade this was a weird one where someone wanted to study the habits of men who were maybe married or otherwise in heterosexual relationships, but were interested in having sexual encounters with other men. And so it was called the tea room trade. And this researcher kind of got involved in it, but didn't tell anyone he was doing research on anyone. He would write down the license plates of the men involved and follow them around. And it was just very, very unethical. And no one knew that they were being studied. And so that's not what you want in a research study. You want people who are aware of being in the research study and consent and volunteer to be in a research study. So generally, there's just a lot of catalysts throughout history where research has kind of gone wrong. And so as a result of that, a set of standards were developed to make sure that we treat all participants with respect. And that's what the informed consent process is really about, is making sure that we do treat participants with respect. And so that kind of led to this Belmont report, which is the 3 ethical principles that inform the entire consent process and the entire design of research. And these principles are respect for persons. We want to make sure that anyone involved in research is being treated with respect and is making the decision to participate. We want to make sure that we're maximizing potential benefits and minimizing potential harms. Some research does involve a bit of risk, but we want to make sure that the benefit from doing the research really justifies involving or asking anyone to participate in research. And finally, we want to make sure that we're acting with justice, which is not denying someone who is otherwise entitled to a service just for the purpose of research. So for instance, if you have 5 spots open in your classroom and you only have 5 children apply for those spots, all 5 of those children are going to get a spot. We're not going to deny someone access to the program when there's a spot available, just so that we can randomize. We're only going to randomize when there is excess demand. We want to make sure that all spots in the program are filled. So this is where you guys are involved, because you will be interacting with parents when they come in and sign consent forms to participate in the research. You'll be inviting parents to participate in the research and to sign or to consent for their children to participate in the research. It's really important to avoid influencing them or coercing them, and I don't think anyone would ever do that, but that's kind of the biggest part of asking someone to participate in research, is to make sure that you feel the parent is voluntarily choosing to participate and doesn't feel pressured to participate. And so it'll be your responsibility to tell them about the research, and we'll talk about what message needs to be conveyed to parents. And kind of the most important things to convey to them will be that selection is determined according to a lottery. If you're not chosen from the lottery to be in the program, you'll be placed on a wait list, which is also randomly ordered. And participation just includes providing us with permission to look at your child's education records and your administrative records. And then you'll also want to convey to them the potential risk and the potential benefits to participating in the program. And all of this information is on the consent form, so they will have access to it. So this is how the consent forms are set up. When a parent receives the Coral application form to take home, it will include these two separate participation forms. The first one, it will be asking for the parent's permission for the research team to look at their child's educational records, so test scores, attendance, anything that Franklin McKinley can provide to measure whether participation in Coral has an impact on achievement. And then there's the parent participation form, where we're asking, so this is about the family well-being question. We want to know if participation in Coral allows a family to be more stable. We're mainly thinking this would be through allowing parents to keep jobs because they're not worried about childcare. And so we want to look at parents' administrative records, such as employment and earnings records, to measure that participation on well-being. So this is kind of how the process will work. The parent will bring in their completed Coral application, you'll check over it per usual, and then you'll review the consent forms with them. Some of the parents might sign the consent forms at home, which is fine, as long as you review the consent guidelines with them and let them know that they can revoke their signature at any time if anything that you're talking about regarding the study changes their original understanding. And so then once you've discussed the consent form with the parents, and if they've chosen to sign, you as the site manager would then sign this part on the parent consent form, acknowledging that you've discussed the research study with the parent and that you think that they understand what they're signing on for. And then you'll provide the parent with a blank copy of the consent form for their records, which is good for them to have because it has information on how to contact the research team if they have any questions about their rights as a study participant. The most important points to convey during your informed consent discussion with them: parents can choose to sign only the child participation form if they're uncomfortable with us looking at their administrative records. I think this is probably most important for families that might be undocumented and might be uncomfortable with us looking at their administrative records. We certainly aren't going to share their information with anyone, but we understand that discomfort, and so it's totally okay for a parent to sign only the child participation form and not sign the parent participation form. It's also okay for them to sign no forms. No one will see their data except the research team, and we'll never let anyone know that they participated in the study. So everything we publish about the study will be an average. We'll say things like, on average, children who participated in Coral improved their reading score by 10 points. It'll never identify anyone's personal information. You'll never be able to know who was in the study. It's voluntary to participate, so a child can still be in the lottery if they don't want to participate in the study, and I'll explain how that works a little later. And then parents aren't being asked to provide any additional information, so we're just going to use the information on the Coral application, school records from the district, and we'll use the Coral application information to match to parents' records and administrative data if we get to that point. So they don't need to provide any new information. We're just asking them for their permission to look at their records. So what do you need to tell parents? First, you'll need to tell them why Coral is participating in a research study, and you'll say, we want to measure how much participation in Coral affects students' education outcomes and their family's well-being. You'll let them know who the researchers are, so a team from the University of Notre Dame, the Lab for Economic Opportunities. And again, all of this information is in the consent form, and you'll also receive a PDF of this presentation because this is a lot of information. But in order to learn about the program's impact, spots in the program will be assigned by lottery, and if you're not chosen for a spot, you'll be placed on a wait list, and you may be called if a spot opens up. You also will need to tell parents what they're being asked to do, which is you're being asked for your permission for the research team to look at your records. You won't be asked to do anything else for the study, and you won't need to provide any new information. Do I have to participate? No. Participation is voluntary. Your student can still participate in the lottery if you don't want to participate in the study. And you can also have your child's education data in the study without including your own data in the study. And then it's important to note that what are the risks if I participate? The risks are pretty minimal. It's primarily related to a breach of confidentiality or data loss, if we should lose your data or if it should be accessed by someone who shouldn't see it. This is pretty unlikely to occur because we will store the data on secure servers. Any data that's transmitted between us and Coral will be password protected and encrypted when we send the data between us. And then of course, you should also communicate to parents that there are always unforeseen risks that are possible, but we don't foresee any risks other than this possible breach of confidentiality. This is an example script, so this kind of just captures everything I was talking about before. So this will be in the PDF if you want to take a look at it when I provide this. So that's the informed consent process. So after that's done and you have all of the applications in, the application period has closed, the next part of the process is to send just a couple of pieces of information from each application to Leo so that we can run the lottery and assign places on the wait list. So we'll send you, I guess I haven't sent this yet, but I will send you an Excel document titled waitlist form. You'll save this document somewhere in your computer that's easy to access. You'll open it and type your school's name in that place. You will then list all of the classrooms and open spots in each classroom. And it's important here to not list any of the spots that are already filled by referrals. We're only interested in the spots that are part of the lottery. So then you would fill out these next 5 columns here with the student name, the student's ID number, then the classroom that they should be included in. So if you have a combined 1st and 2nd grade classroom, that's what you would select. If they should be a part of the 4th grade classroom, that's what you would select. And there should be a drop-down that will be populated by the list of the classrooms that you put in there above. And then if they have a sibling that you want them to be tied to on the wait list, you'll put that sibling's ID number in the row for the student whose sibling that is. So we just want to make sure that we know which kids are tied to which siblings. And then lastly, we'd like to have some sort of measure where we can just check to see if the lottery is making sense. So some sort of balancing characteristic. And so we thought we could have reading level be that characteristic. And I know that a lot of times parents don't actually fill this out. So we're hoping that when a parent turns in an application, one of the things you can check is to see if reading level has been filled out. And if it hasn't, just to ask them to make an educated guess at where they think their child's reading level would be so that you can plug that information in here. So once those 5 columns, so if you have a student who's not identifying, or a student who is not participating, don't write their name or ID number. Instead, we'll go ahead and list them as de-identified students. So if you have one student who's not participating, they're de-identified student number 1, and then de-identified student number 2. And make sure to keep track of which de-identified student is which for your own records. So I would probably just write it on the front of their application. This is de-identified student number 1. And so that way they can be included in the lottery just like this, but we won't get any of their information. Yes. So then once this is all done and all of your students have been entered into the application or into the waitlist form, you'll go ahead and send this to Leo. So you'll go to sendthisfile.com and you'll log in. You'll log in using this username and password, and it'll take you to this page. You'll send it to skolka@nd.edu, which is me. And then I'd ask you to include your school's name in the subject, just so I can kind of keep track of what's coming in. And then you'll be able to set a password. It'll ask you to confirm it. And then you'll upload your waitlist form and press send. And then I'll have you text or call me with the password you set. This is just kind of an extra precaution because the waitlist form is coming to my email. This way, if for some reason someone were to hack into my email, they don't also have the password, they'd have to get my phone too. So if you text me or call me with the password, that would be great because no one can download and open this file without the password you send. So that's using the waitlist form. Now what happens on the other end when you get the waitlist results back from us, I'll send you the file back using that same website, and I'll use the same password you chose before. So I would just write that down somewhere so you don't forget it. If you do, that's fine. You can call or text me and I'll give it back to you. You'll get an email like this. You'll follow the link and you'll be prompted for the password and you'll download the file. And then this is what it'll look like when you open your returned file. It'll just be that next column that's populated. It'll show you, if it says accepted, the student should be offered a spot right away. And then the numbers indicate their place in the waitlist for that grade. So if someone turns down a spot, you'll offer it to the next person on the waitlist for that grade. And then we would ask that you fill out these 2 additional columns along the way as you contact students. So there's a drop down underneath attempted to contact, and so you can say, yes, I contacted them, they're enrolled. Yes, they turned down the spot though, or yes, I informed them that the program was full. And then if they did turn down a spot, we'd like to know why they're turning down spots. So it's also a drop-down menu where you can select the reason that a parent turned down a spot. So once you've filled out all the spots and contacted the parents, save the form, and then you can return it to us using the same steps from earlier. And then that's about it. So summary of what we did today, we talked about why we're doing the study. We quickly went through the study design, and then we reviewed the enrollment process. As far as I know, the next steps are for the preferred enrollment period to end on May 7th. And then I think the application period will go from May 7th to May 31st. And then after that, it's up to you to fill out the waitlist form and send it to Leo whenever you're ready to do that. So thanks for listening. Do you have any questions or comments at this point?
Questions, anybody?
So we need to have the waitlist form by May 31st?
No,
The
that's
wait
just,
list to
To open our application period?
yes. And then remember, I know some of the principals contacted me about the 30%, so I talked to them already, and I know there's deadlines on some of them. So we worked with them already. But when you're talking to principals, they're gaining 70% of the students, and then we're doing 30% of the lottery. And then we had talked about that before. questions. And you're looking at like 25 students, 25, 26 students, so you're probably looking at like 4 or 5 kids in each group, if you're looking by classroom. Questions, now that we have Shauna on the phone right now.
Well, just more a question for you. Would that be even for us in junior high? Because we have open enrollment. And it's very rare when they.
Well, I know, Shauna, we were not looking into middle school kids, right?
They're included in the IRB. I wasn't sure how many middle school classrooms you had, but we can definitely.
So definitely for middle school, we do. I know compared to, you know, Bridges and looking at Sylvandale, there's 2 different dynamics there. But if you have a long wait list, definitely we want to keep them, you know, do that lottery, especially for those who are not referred. If a student is referred, then, you know, we don't take them, as well as if we only have 5 spots, right? If I just want to confirm this, Shauna, if we have 5 spots in our 1st and 2nd grade, but we only have 5 students who want to be part of that, then we don't do a lottery in with those 5 students, because that guarantees that those 5 kids will be part of the study, correct? Will not be part of the study, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean,
okay.
you won't know that until after you have all the applications in, so they should still go through the informed consent process. But at the end of the day, if you have just as many students as you have spots open, or if you have fewer students than you have spots open, we're not going to randomize.
Right.
So for me, it would be only the ones that are on the waiting list, and then they come up with the lottery. Or
right.
Those are the ones that are going to be on the lottery.
Right.
The waiting list.
Okay. And then I know I was meeting with the manager this afternoon, and we were talking about kinder students. And our question with the kinder students, we're still taking it, because we do, even though they're kinder students, we still get them referred, because before they start kinder, they get tested.
Yeah.
So even, well, the students who are not referred, we're still doing lottery, right, for kinder, if we have a wait list.
Yeah, whenever you have open enrollment spots and have more applications than you have spots, then we can do the lottery.
Okay, so no matter what grade.
Yep, no matter what grade.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions that you guys have? And Shauna, managers can call you. I know you had your number and email, I believe, as well on the site. They can follow up with you if they have questions. Correct? Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. You can.
Not to put you on the spot in front of them.
Yeah, no, you could. I would say go ahead and email me if you have any questions. But yeah, during the process, you can definitely get a hold of me by phone as well.
Okay. Perfect. Any questions? No? Thank you. And I know it's so late. We passed your dinner time, Shauna, so really appreciate you taking the time and being with us.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to make sure I stop this recording. And oops. Yeah, I will try to make this available as long as I don't mess up this recording. But yeah, and I will definitely send you a PDF of the slides.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Okay.